It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to UofL Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. Hope you'll stick around for the next half hour or so. We've got some interesting historical recordings that you're going to hear from radio at the University of Louisville. We've got some old clips from Wave Radio. They're at U of L now. We're going to listen to them here in just a second. But let me tell you what else we've got coming up on the program first. It's got to be tough to be a nurse or a social worker dealing with seriously ill or dying patients every day, and the University of Louisville is studying what's known as compassion fatigue and how that's impacting turnover and job satisfaction of hospice and palliative care workers, and we'll talk to an expert on that who's doing some research in that field. But first, as I said, U of L has a vast history of Louisville in its archives, including 70-year-old radio interviews and shows about Louisville. Carrie Daniels is an archivist at U of L, and Christine Ehrick is a history professor with another title, which we'll discuss here in a minute. The two of them and others have been working on a project to preserve and digitize these old radio clips, and we're going to play a couple of them for you here in just a couple of minutes. But ladies, welcome back. You've both been on the show before. Glad you're here again.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks
to be here.
All right. So U of L has all of these old radio clips. Carrie, you're the archivist. Why don't you tell us what U of L has in its archive collection right now?
Sure. We have a collection of about 400 transcription discs from Wave Radio. Transcription discs were usually about 16 inches in diameter, so bigger than the 12-inch vinyl we're used to. They were metal with lacquer on top, and they were used in broadcasts. They could be either a pre-recorded show that was rebroadcast, or they could be clips or dubs, as they were called, that were interspersed in a news broadcast, for example. Right. And in some cases, we also have the scripts from those broadcasts.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so we could actually...
These are like from Going back how far?
We have material going back to 1939. Most of it's from the 40s. And most of those news broadcasts would be from the 40s. But we could actually recreate the broadcast.
Maybe we should do that on this program. What do you think? We could do a 1948 news broadcast from Wave Radio. What do you think?
That would be wonderful. Let's do it.
That'd be kind of fun. Mm-hmm. So, and these are open to the public to come in and listen to, right?
Well, some of them are. Yeah, because...
Which goes to the project that you're working on.
Exactly. So, as I said, they're 16 inches. That's bigger than your normal turntable can handle. They're also really fragile. The recording is fragile. So they were made to be played more than once, but not much more. So they have to be transferred by professionals. We don't have the technology or the expertise in-house. We've gotten about a dozen of them reformatted, including 6 or so that were done just recently in the last year. So we're doing it as we can, as we find funds, as we receive donations to make it possible.
And how much does it cost to transfer each one of those from that old school tape, for lack of a better term, to digital format?
We had 7 discs transferred. It was a little bit under $400.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
All right. So, Christine, how do you fit into all of this? You're a history professor at the University of Louisville, but you've got some interest in these old radio broadcasts.
Yeah, so I am, by my official training, I'm a historian of Latin America, but I have, in more recent years, become very interested in the history of radio. And through that kind of complicated path is how I ended up first as a research affiliate, and then later now as communications director of the Radio Preservation Task Force, which is a U.S.-based federal task force under the auspices of the Library of Congress and the National Recording Preservation Board. And this is a relatively new body made up of academics from around the country, but also other practitioners, collectors, and others who are committed to identifying, preserving, and making accessible all of these kinds of radio materials, exactly the kind of things that have been sitting in the UofL archives for a long time, sitting there without anyone having any ability to get access to them because we don't have the funds. And so we're trying to hopefully get together the funds, but also just to call people's attention to the existence of these rich materials and underscore the importance of preserving them before they disappear. Because, as Carrie said, these kinds of formats are not that stable. So it's not like a paper archive that can sit there for another 50 years and it'll be fine, right? These things are deteriorating as we speak. So there's an urgent need to get these materials stabilized as soon as we can.
Right. All right. I'll tell you what. Let's do this. We've got one clip we're going to play here from Louisville Mayor Charles Farnsley. So why don't one of you set up kind of what's going on here, and then we'll listen to it.
I could actually read the script if you like.
Well, I don't want you to read what they say because we're going to listen to it. But
well, no, we actually have an introduction for this piece.
Oh, okay.
But I can tell you
That'd be great.
this was recorded at his inauguration in 1949.
And it was his second term, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think.
Actually, it was his second. Yeah, it was complicated. He was inaugurated 3 times.
A bit of Louisville history we did not know, ladies and
Yes,
gentlemen.
yes.
Okay. So this is Mayor Charles Farnsley, but go ahead, Carrie. Tell us what the setup is here.
So the setup is, let's see, last Saturday, if you heard Wave's broadcast of Mayor Farnsley's inauguration, you may have heard him say something about controlling the weather. In case you didn't, here recorded is what he said.
Here's Mayor Farnsley now. I wonder if you'd say something for our WAVE audience, Mayor Farnsley. Congratulations first on your
Thank you,
inauguration.
sir.
How does it feel to be inaugurated again?
Well, I think this time we can really do some things. I'm hoping. We're
Do you
trying
have
mighty
anything
hard.
specially planned for the city? Something new that you might tell us
Oh,
about?
I think mostly more of the same. The one thing I'm hoping to do a great deal on is climate control, to improve the climate so that the people can live and get to sleep in the summertime at night so it'll be cool. I think a lot can be done about it.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Farnsley, and congratulations again on your
Thank you.
inauguration.
Thank you.
So that was pretty interesting to me because you've got in 1948, right? In 1949, a mayor of Louisville basically talking about climate change. Did that strike you as something sort of interesting?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was this kind of thing. It was a thing at the time to try to control the weather. They talked about, they discovered cloud seeding where they thought they might be able to control rain. So it was kind of a thing, but I can tell from the script as it goes on, they say, a lot of other people wondered if he was kidding. The answer is no, he wasn't. So clearly he was going a little bit further than people expected. But I did also think that he was talking about, apparently he went on when they asked him about it, he really identified trees as important for keeping us cool. And I think we know that's true.
Right.
We're still trying to get more trees planted.
Right, exactly. So you're talking about this 70 years ago, basically, and you're talking about, again, a mayor of Louisville talking about these environmental issues, which I just found fascinating when you listen to this clip of Louisville History on Wave Radio. Was there anything else that, Christine, when you first heard it, was there anything that struck you about that interview?
Well, much the same. I thought it was interesting that clearly, to listeners in 1949, this was just kind of crazy, crazy talk, right? And now it doesn't seem so crazy at all,
No,
right?
it doesn't.
So it was interesting in terms of how much our perception of these things have changed, and so it was interesting from that standpoint to me.
All right, let's do this. Let's take a little break. I'm talking with Carrie Daniels and Christine Ehrick from the University of Louisville. We're talking about radio archives at UofL and across the country. Christine, you belong to this national organization. So there are folks, I assume, at universities all over the country that have similar archives like we do that they just can't get digitized or...
Absolutely. There are materials in university archives, there are materials in local public libraries, there are materials scattered all over the place. In some cases that the holding institutions themselves didn't even know existed until one of our research affiliates said, hey, do you have any old archival radio? And they went digging around and went, oh, hey, we actually do. So, some of it is really just, there's a lot of pockets of material around. And so one of the things we're trying to do is ideally create some kind of a national database that would, just to identify, what materials are where, what kind of state they're in terms of preservation. So we've been trying to, we have folks who are doing the kind of metadata part of that, trying to pull all those materials, all that information together, just so we know what's where.
And this is the Radio Preservation Task Force, right?
Correct, yeah.
And is there a place on the web that anybody can go and look for this stuff right now with the task force, or are you getting there?
Well, we don't actually have a database that's up online yet. There's material you can go to. It's just radiopreservation.org is our website, and you can get some information there. And there are some really fascinating projects that I think are good models of what can be done with these materials in the right circumstances. So up in Chicago, for example, they have the Studs Terkel archive, and that's a project that's really gotten off the ground, and it's amazing. And he's, as I'm sure you remember, right, he was a guy who was a radio guy for a long, long time and was kind of famous for a lot of his oral histories and all of that. And he had a radio program in Chicago for some 45 years. And that radio station and the Chicago History Museum have a joint project, and you can go to, if you just Google Studs Terkel archive, and there's a bunch of stuff that's been put up already, and it's really fascinating. You can search through and listen to all of his interviews with everybody from celebrities to, taxi drivers and garbage collectors and whatever, and
just people on the street in Chicago.
Yeah, so it's a good model of what we hope to see happen with other similar collections.
And Carrie, these what'd you say, 40 different clips that you've got in archives? Is that right? From Wave Radio.
We've got about a dozen that have been digitized and about 400.
400
altogether.
I'm sorry, 400.
Yeah.
Forgot to put the extra zero on there. So why is it important that the University of Louisville, A, have these, keep these, and preserve these, and B, try and at least make them available to the public, in your mind?
They are an important documentation of our history, and they literally speak history. Some of the material we have is national in scope, even international, but there's a wonderful portion of this particular collection that's very local, that is person on the street interviews, that is UofL basketball games, and a few UK too.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's our history. In the mix. Yeah. So there are programs that were produced locally, and that is an important part of our history that needs to be preserved and heard. Right. And that's the preservation part we're taking care of. We want to move into the making it heard part.
Right. We're talking with Carrie Daniels, who's a archivist at the University of Louisville, and also with Christine Ehrick, who's a history professor, and as she explained earlier, also on this Radio Preservation Task Force, the communications director. I'll tell you what, let's listen to the second clip that we've got here. Carrie, you want to set up what we're getting ready to listen to?
Sure. So I-64 hasn't been here forever. And when it was built, one of the important decisions they had to make for the Eastern Expressway was to figure out exactly what its route would be. So apparently the communication wasn't perfect, and some people found out about that their house might be demolished to make way for the expressway in the Courier-Journal. And so Wave Radio went out, and I believe they actually went to people's homes and asked them how they felt about possibly being relocated to make way for the Eastern Expressway, as you can imagine.
The Eastern Expressway.
The Eastern Expressway.
Now known as?
I-64.
Okay, so here's the interview, and this is from what year? 1948, 49, something like that.
48. It's 1948.
1948. Yep. This is the interview from 1948, Wave Radio, talking to a woman whose house is potentially being torn down to make way for the Eastern Expressway and I-64. Here's the clip.
What is your name, please?
Mrs. Roscoe Cox,
Mrs. Cox, what is this address here?
1324 Lexington Road.
And will the Eastern Expressway take your house also?
Yes, it will take it all.
How long you been here now?
I've been living here 6 years.
You own this place?
That's right.
Have you got any place else to go?
I have no idea where to go.
You haven't made any plans,
No
then?
plans whatsoever.
And I don't suppose that you were notified either.
No, I haven't been notified as yet.
Well, do you resent this intrusion?
No, I don't resent it, but I think we should have enough to buy us another place with the same value as what we have.
Do you think there's any possibility of getting another place at this
Well,
time?
you might. This place is for sale, but they're high.
I see. But you do not like the idea of the expressway taking your home.
No, I don't like it.
How soon would it take place? How soon would you be evicted? Do you know?
No, I don't have any idea.
I see. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this poor woman thinks her house is going to get torn down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what she's afraid of.
Right, exactly.
And what else out of that interview did you find striking as you go back to the 1940s? The interview style, I guess, and.
It is a different style. And I think you're in a good position to speak to that more because you do so much more interviewing. I think it's also her responses are interesting. She speaks very quickly and almost sounds prepared. She might have prepared for the interview.
Right.
So in some ways it's kind of candid and off the cuff, but in some ways it's not.
It's a little stilted.
Yes.
A little bit, I found.
Yeah.
So what ultimately happens? This they go and they interview this woman. What happened with her house?
Well, her house is still there. Her house was not demolished to make way for the Eastern Expressway. It's a safe bet that other people's houses were, but they rerouted it. My sense from my own studies is that it was really because it would have also run through part of Cherokee and Seneca parks, and there was a great deal of opposition to that.
To doing that, probably a wise move there. Don't run an expressway through a park.
Yeah, I know
that's
that's
not a good idea.
No.
Okay, well, so let's try and wrap this up then. So what can people do? What do you want people to do when they hear this and they hear about these radio clips that we've got from Wave Radio at U of L, and we hear about these all across the country? These places where we've got these old historical radio broadcasts. What do we want folks to do? Christine?
Well, certainly if folks happen to have materials, I mean, the Radio Task Force has worked very closely with and has benefited significantly from private collectors. In many cases, you have people who, for a variety of reasons, have amassed or created their own archives of collections, radio cassette recordings off of radio, and so if people have those kinds of things, we certainly would love to know about it. So that's the sort of the first part. And the second part is, well, I mean, there certainly are, if folks have resources and they want to donate to help the U of L Archives proceed in their digitization and preservation of these materials, that would be great. And yeah, you know, we have a big conference coming up, the task force, in a couple of weeks, and that's going to be a really unprecedented gathering of all kinds of folks. We're going to have the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian and the National Council of Public History and NPR and Voice of America and all kinds of people there. So it's going to be a great opportunity to have a bunch of people sit down together and try to work out what comes next in terms of this process of preservation, and particularly in terms of access.
And Carrie, from the archivist point of view and the U of L Archives, I guess, you're more than happy to take people's checks if they want to help digitize these things, right?
Absolutely. It was a generous donor who made it possible for us to get this most recent batch digitized.
Okay, so that's one thing. And then the second part, can people find the ones that you have digitized? Where can they find it and listen to them?
They can come into our reading room. We're on the lower level of Ekstrom Library, and we're open 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Stop by anytime. We'd be glad to plan for you.
All right. Carrie Daniels, Christine Ehrick, always good to see you. It's really interesting stuff. Great. We'll bring some more clips when you get some more done, okay?
Definitely.
All right, very good.
Thanks a lot.
It is a tough field to be in, palliative care, not easy to say either, caring for those who are seriously ill or dying every single day. Barbara Head has a dual role as a professor in both the School of Medicine and the Kent School of Social Work, and she's doing research and training with these healthcare and social workers who deal with the folks who are dying, frankly. Right, Barbara?
Right.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about this study that you did on those folks who deal with these palliative care issues. It's a tough job, isn't it?
It is. And I think people outside of the field think it's tougher than it is for those inside the field, because many of the professionals in palliative care and hospice care truly love their work, and it's very meaningful work for them. So I got a grant from the Hospice Nurses Foundation to study its professional quality of life, which is compassion fatigue and compassion satisfaction, as well as job satisfaction among hospice and palliative nurses. So we have had about 633 respondents from across the country, and we're looking at how satisfied they are with their job and the levels of compassion fatigue and compassion satisfaction. And we're finding that about 90% of these nurses are either extremely satisfied or satisfied with the work they're doing. And they're very satisfied with their relationships with peers and patients and their relationships with physicians, which is really good that physicians and nurses are able to work together so well in this field. And also very satisfied with their professional pride. Of course,
so they like their jobs.
They do. They're very happy with their jobs.
I guess that would be surprising because of the turnover. You know, you hear about the turnover in these kinds of jobs. So are you maybe just hearing from the people that really like their jobs and not the ones that are... what do you think?
You probably hear from those that are the most satisfied and those that are the least satisfied when you do a survey like this. But I don't... we also ask them... if they think about changing jobs and how often they think about changing jobs. And most of them think about changing jobs occasionally, but I think that's pretty true of the workforce. Everybody's looking for, the
better opportunity, right?
the perfect job. But in general, most of these nurses have been in the field a long time. And another interesting thing is that the older the nurses are, the higher their compassion satisfaction and the lower their burnout. So I think that people in this field find ways to adjust. They are proud of the work they do and have great relationships with their patients and their families. And we also ask them how they take care of themselves, because that's extremely important. And we got a lot of great answers. The number one answer is physical activity of some sort. So it could be running a marathon, or it could be yoga. They like body work, massage, meditation and prayer, time with their families, and then debriefing with their peers. So it's very good that they can talk with each other about what's going on. And teamwork is very big in hospice and palliative care, and that's one of the benefits of teamwork, is having peers you can work with and talk to.
I guess I'm just really surprised at the number that are satisfied with their jobs, because that would seem to grind on you after a while.
Right. Right. Well, one of the things that may happen is that a new nurse starting out in hospice or palliative care may find it's not for her. So she may have already left the field before we were able to survey her and capture her feelings about it. But those that stay seem to find great meaning in that, as acknowledged by the fact that the older nurses have even more compassion, satisfaction.
We're talking with Barbara Head from the University of Louisville, and we're talking about her study that she's done and is still doing on compassion in palliative care workers and those who work with the dying folks, basically. When you look at the turnover rates and the burnout rates among the nurses and folks who work in hospice care and palliative care, is it any worse? Or do you know or is it about the same as nurses who work in the emergency room?
When we compared the results on the Professional Quality of Life survey with normative data, and that's data they've collected over the years on many, many participants, we're finding that it's very similar, that they are not more they don't have more compassion fatigue or less compassion satisfaction. So it's very similar to other fields.
Okay. What do you hope happens with this study that you've done?
Well, I hope that we can get maybe some recognition for the profession, that it's a wonderful work and very satisfying, and so that we can get new nurses interested in this field and the positives of this field. I'm hoping that employers will look at this and see what they can do better. We did ask the participants what their employer could do to improve their job, and most of the answers had to do with more recognition for the work they do, more involvement in decision making, and more autonomy on the job. So just some little things that employers might do, because when there is turnover, it's of high cost to the employers, because then they have to recruit and retrain, and they're really losing out if they don't keep valuable employees.
Is there anything that U of L, either in the form of the Kent School of Social Work or the School of Medicine or the School of Nursing, is doing to perhaps train these workers, because they are going into a little bit different field than just being a nurse in a hospital, to better prepare them for the emotional toll that some of this may take?
That's a very good question. All of our nursing students and medical students do rotate through palliative medicine, and they are exposed to palliative care and the principles of palliative care. They come together in interdisciplinary teams and discuss care of palliative care patients. And so they're able to see what this field is all about, the benefits of being in this field, the pros and the cons while they're in school, so that they are exposed to that, because regardless of whether or not they specialize in hospice or palliative care, they will be dealing with dying people. So to help them be more comfortable talking and being with dying patients is very important.
Very good. All right, Barbara Head, always good talking to you. Good to see you. All right. We always try and wrap up these programs with a Did You Know segment about the University of Louisville, something you may not have known about U of L. So here's your Did You Know segment for today. Did you know the University of Louisville's Brandeis School of Law in September launched an online certificate program to help healthcare workers hone their legal finesse and professional credentials? The Certificate in Health Law is a series of 9 courses offered by the Brandeis School of Law in collaboration with iLaw, which is an online lawyer service. So there you go. That'll about do it for this edition of U of L Today with Mark Hebert, which you can hear every Monday and Tuesday night at 6 o'clock on 93.9 The Ville. You can also watch the programs on Metro TV, which is Louisville's government access channel, and also on KETKY throughout the week. I'll see you Monday morning at 9:30 on WHAS TV's Great Day Live, where I'll join Rachel and Terry for some interesting story about the University of Louisville and the research, great students, or programming that's going on at U of L. Thanks for listening to U of L Today with Mark Hebert, and go Cards!